In Ur of the Chaldees, God called Abram, promising him a great nation and land. With unwavering faith, Abram obeyed, journeying into Canaan, embodying trust in divine covenant. Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 to 3. The land was seen as a divine promise, a homeland prepared by God's loving plan, emphasizing obedience and faith as the pathway to salvation. God reaffirmed his covenant through various acts. The promise of descendants as numerous as stars, Genesis chapter 15 verse 5. And the symbol of circumcision, Genesis chapter 17 verses 10 to 14, marking the sacred bond. This covenant reflected divine fidelity and human responsibility, calling Abraham to trust amid uncertainties. The story of Sarah and Isaac signifies divine grace and patience. Despite their old age, God's promise persisted. Their faith deepened understanding of God's justice and mercy, offering hope that divine plans transcend human limitations. Genesis chapter 21 verses 1 to 7. When Abraham was tested with the sacrifice of Isaac, Genesis chapter 22, it revealed ultimate obedience to God's will. This act foreshadows future divine sacrifices, emphasizing trust and surrender, core virtues for God's followers, illustrating that divine promises often require profound faith. The covenant with Abraham established God's chosen people, setting the stage for their journey into salvation history. It was a divine invitation to participate in God's plan, reaffirming that faithfulness and trust are the keys to inheriting God's promises. A severe famine struck Canaan, compelling Jacob and his sons to seek refuge in Egypt, trusting the faithfulness of Joseph, who was sold into slavery but had risen to become Pharaoh's steward. Genesis chapters 37 to 39. The divine hand guided Joseph through suffering toward salvation for many. Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dreams, Genesis chapter 41, revealed God's plan to store grain for future generations, demonstrating divine wisdom amid worldly power. This acted as a divine orchestration for Israel's survival during the impending drought, exemplifying faith's role in salvation. Joseph's brothers journey to Egypt, unaware that divine providence had prepared this reunion. Joseph's forgiveness epitomized God's mercy, illustrating how divine grace can overcome betrayal and usher in reconciliation, affirming God's universal plan of salvation. Jacob's family settled in Goshen, enjoying Egypt's blessing, yet maintaining their identity and faith. They became fruitful and multiplied, fulfilling God's promise of descendants. Genesis chapters 46 to 50, trusting that divine plans extend beyond immediate circumstances. Generations later, the new pharaohs rise, who knew not Joseph, Exodus chapter 1 verse 8, led to enslavement. This shift foreshadows the need for divine intervention to liberate his people, highlighting that divine plans often involve trials before salvation. Born during a time of peril, Moses was hidden among the reeds by his mother, Jochebed, trusting in God's providence. Exodus chapter 2. His early life embodied divine protection, a foreshadowing of the divine deliverance to come. Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush, Exodus chapter 3, revealed divine calling to lead Israel out of bondage. God's proclamation, IAMWHOIAM, Exodus chapter 3 verse 14, signified his eternal existence and unchanging covenant, calling Moses to trust in divine power. The plagues and the crossing of the Red Sea, Exodus chapters 7 to 14, demonstrated God's mighty hand and sovereignty. These miracles were signs of divine judgment and mercy, encouraging faith in divine justice and salvation for his chosen people. Mount Sinai and the giving of the Ten Commandments, Exodus chapters 19 to 20, reaffirmed God's covenant with Israel, outlining divine law, a moral and spiritual guide. This was a sacred moment, emphasizing obedience and reverence in divine relationship. The journey through the wilderness tested Israel's faith, but God's provision, manna, water, and guidance, reminded them of divine sustenance. Their errant hearts illustrated human weakness, yet God's patience rooted in his covenantal love. The Israelites wandering in the desert, Numbers 14, was a test of faith. God's anger and mercy were intertwined. Despite their disobedience, his promise remained. Moses' intercession embodied divine compassion. The establishment of the tabernacle, Exodus chapter 25, symbolized God's presence dwelling among his people, emphasizing divine accessibility and relationship. The sacred space became a sign of divine covenant and grace. The sending of the spies and their report, Numbers 13-14, revealed human fear, yet Caleb and Joshua trusted in God's power. Their faith contrasted with the fear of the majority, highlighting divine trust over worldly doubt. The provision of manna and quail, Exodus chapter 16, symbolized divine sustenance, reinforcing reliance on God's grace. Their daily dependence on heaven's gift exemplified spiritual humility and trust in divine care. Moses' leadership and intercession kept the covenant alive, pointing to the divine mercy that renews even in human failure. The wilderness journey became a spiritual school leading to the promised land. Under Joshua's leadership, the Israelites prepared to cross the Jordan River. The miraculous parting, Joshua chapter 3, demonstrated divine presence and assurance that God fights for his people, strengthening unwavering faith. The fall of Jericho, Joshua chapter 6, was an act of divine grace and obedience. The walls crumbled at the sound of trumpet and faith, illustrating how divine power can overcome human obstacles when aligned with divine will. The division of the land among the tribes, Joshua chapters 13-21, symbolized divine inheritance, emphasizing divine justice, patience, and the importance of faithfulness in stewarding God's promises. Joshua's final exhortation, Joshua chapter 24, called Israel to renew their covenant with God, choosing loyalty over idols. This act reaffirmed divine sovereignty and the need for ongoing fidelity to divine law. The journey into Canaan signified the culmination of divine covenant, a land prepared by God's hand, inhabited by a people called to live in righteousness, justice, and worship, embodying divine hope and divine justice.